I love to take on this persona like I'm unshakable. And it serves me a lot of the time. If I were to be honest, I receive feedback from people that in general, in scenarios where many people might respond by becoming stressed or angry or panicked, that I do tend to take sort of a laid back approach, but I get a little cocky with it. I get a little too into it. I identify it with a little bit too much of like, yeah, I don't even really feel fear. I don't even really feel rejection. I'm just a guy that's above it all, something like that. Nonsense. And I know that where that's coming from is this idea that when someone says, get in touch with your feelings, the vision that comes to my mind is a tissue box, a red nose, maybe some junk food, possibly a bubble bath. And I'm like, yeah, no. I mean, I like junk food. But other than that, I'm like, yeah, this isn't really me. I've never felt better after a good cry. I don't even know what a good cry is. It's just not the way that I deal with things. And so whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh yeah, get in touch with your emotion. That's not really me. So here I go walking through life and feel like, yeah, I'm kind of bulletproof and strong and stuff's hitting me, until just recently there was an event in life that I just couldn't see coming. It's one where it's like I'm walking through all bulletproof and all of a sudden someone's just waiting around the corner with a bat and they just decleated me, right? My legs just came right out from under me and I'm on my back looking up. And I was like, man, what just happened? And what do I do now? How do I move on? Noticing that my default was to try and push that feeling, pretend it wasn't there. I was feeling something and I'm a dude. So I don't even know how to name it. I couldn't even say what it was. But it was this high pressure situation where I was suddenly involved in an intimate way. I had lots of influence over how the situation was going to play out. It was something I've never been involved in before, never imagined being involved in before. And I showed up the best that I could, and it even worked. I mean, it was a situation that didn't really have a lot of good outcomes, but the best I could hope for. The police showed up. The victim wasn't victimized. I mean, everything went well. I was on the phone as this was going down, and it went okay. But I felt really heavy. And I thought like, hey, it went okay. I should be fine. But I felt something. And I couldn't name it, like I said, because I'm a guy and I can't name feelings very well. But I've been in this work long enough. I've had this conversation and heard this conversation enough times that I know it's important to allow emotions. So I'm like, I don't know what the emotion is. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I know I want to somehow allow this. My best guess at what that looks like for me is to go grab a paddleboard, get out on the lake, and feel whatever I'm going to feel. So I go out there and I start paddling around and I start listening to some music and I turn it off. No, this isn't doing it. And I think maybe I need to listen to a podcast or something. No, that's not it. This is heavier. This is a bit bigger than anything I've really been in before. And what I thought was actually that I would like to hear from God, to be honest. I was praying and I was like, I would really like to hear from God. And I do that. I pray and I get in touch with God and I speak with him and we've got a relationship. I feel like I've got a pretty tight relationship with Jesus. But in this moment, I didn't really want to put in any effort. I wanted it to be easier than that. And so what I did was I had the AirPods already because I had been listening to music. I just put on, if you go into YouVersion Bible, it has an audio option. You can just click the audio. And so I picked one of my favorite sections of the Bible and just kind of go to the middle of the Gospel of John. And I just hit play and I just let it speak. I just let it go over my ears. And I figured, okay, this is kind of like hearing God. And I wasn't even really paying attention. I believe that the word has power and I wanted it in me. And so I was just paddling out there on a pretty lake, sweating in the sun and listening to this. And I noticed that it was working, that I was feeling a bit better, but I could tell that I was calming down, but whatever was there was still present. So wit has taught me to get into my body, which sounds so not what I would do or what I would think of as manly, but I know what she means. What she means is start asking the questions. How does my chest feel? How do my hands feel? How are my shoulders right now? How's my breathing? How's my heart rate? I'm like literally giving like a scan from head to toe of my body just to see how things are going. I think Whit even has a meditation of this. If you're in Trust You, you can see it. You can actually play this and she kind of guides you through it in case you're a dude that's like, yeah, I've got no idea what to do. It's awesome. She's got a beautiful voice. You'll love listening to it and she can just guide you through this process. But I started going through that and what I notice is my heart rate's up a bit. Okay, I'm breathing a bit more shallow. I find that when I take a deep breath, it feels relieving. It doesn't just feel like I'm calm or something, like it feels like actual relief. I noticed that I was actually a bit shaky. If I were to really stop and evaluate, how are my hands right now? And I was like, oh my gosh, what I'm feeling is fear. I am afraid. And I'm not afraid really right now. I was afraid. I was afraid that I wasn't going to show up well in that situation. I was afraid that I was the only one that could influence a situation in any way and I was going to do it wrong. I was afraid I was doing it wrong. I was afraid that someone was going to be victimized in a scenario where I had no way to physically be involved and I wasn't going to be able to pull it off. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really was scared. I felt fear. And that fear was still present because it was just a heavier situation than I normally have to deal with. That fear was in me. It was still running things. It was processing stuff. But this is what's so cool. And I know many of you guys can relate to this. Fear is closely tied to adventure. I actually like fear. My relationship with fear is pretty solid. I don't know that I would call us like best friends or something like that, but yeah, I'm cool with fear. I like to add fun to fear for most of my free time, to have it be the way I like to enjoy myself and live my life and do all those things. So it was kind of a relief. I was like, oh man, I was worried maybe I needed a bubble bath and a good cry, but it turns out no, what I was feeling was fear. And when I was feeling fear, all I had to do was communicate in a believable way that I was safe. And it seems silly because I was safe. It went well, like all those things happened, but I needed to really train my mind on that. And so I started telling myself, like, you're safe. She's safe. It's safe. Everything is fine. You're not in danger. And then taking deep breaths, and just letting that go a number of times and noticing when I was describing it before, I'd observed it was causing relief to take those deep breaths. Well, yes, if you go back to our caveman days when we're running from that saber-toothed tiger and our fear, that cortisol has been released, like we've got the adrenaline in there and we are quickly processing everything in our surroundings, where to go right, where to go left, jumping over logs, ducking under trees. How can I somehow make a move to get away from this thing that's faster than me? And I get to the cave and I get to where it can't reach me. And I'm safe. And I realized, oh, okay, that's what happened. Somehow in this phone call, without my awareness, I'm just focused on trying to address a situation. Fear, stress, cortisol triggered inside of me. It flooded my system. It was in my brain and my body was responding to the effects of that being there. Once I was aware of what it was, I had the ability to say, Jake, you're safe. And once I could be safe, once I could take that deep breath, that's what processing emotion is. It's just allowing it to be there, to do the job that it was designed to do. And so it doesn't require tissue. I mean, it can, but while I'm speaking to the dudes, I know you don't want it to require tissue. I know you don't want it to require a bubble bath. I know that you don't want it to even require journaling. Even if you're a journaler, you don't want to journal about your sadness. And so I guess the hope I want to offer you, or the insight, the curiosity, is that allowing emotion, it's different than you think. Emotion is broader than you think, and it really did help me that day. And the huge benefit of it was that happened on a weekend, and I was worried this was going to rattle me for a bit because I had immediately tried to go back to work, and I wasn't creative like I wanted to be. I wasn't innovative like I wanted to be. I wasn't building the business that I wanted to build. And I was like, dang it, I sure hope this goes away by Monday. Well, when I actually allowed the emotion and went through that process, it 100% went away on Monday. My creativity and innovation was back. I could focus, I was me, I could show up and serve people the way that I serve people. It was incredible. And so I wish that every guy out there could hear that being willing to acknowledge that emotions are real and learning the skills of how to allow them and work through them actually gets you back to you faster.